for the benefit of the Free State. In terms of economic contribution, the Free State agriculture contributes about 9.4% of the GDP based on the last 5 year statistics as released by the GCIS. In 2021, the Free State generated the second largest income from the sales of goods and services in the agriculture and related services. We generated about 51.1 billion rand compared to the 74.9 billion rand of the Western Cape. Now, those figures can't be denied that they are decisive in view of our total population and capacity. In terms of salaries and wages, we approximated 4.4 billion rand, which constitute about 8.1% of the Free State contribution, and we employ roughly around 74,000 people. The agricultural waste sector contributed about 10% of the national footprint. In terms of our sector share of the regional total GDP, in 2023 quarter 3, it shows that agriculture came in at 5.1% compared to mining at 5.3%. That's our argument that you can never deny the decisiveness of agriculture in the economy. We have got our own regions, program director, about 5 districts, which specializes in their own commodities, like I said. Because we are not sharing our slides, we will share the presentation so that people are free to look at the various Metro, which is hosting us today. We will also share a table in terms of the commodities that we produce that indicates the decisiveness of the production in the Free State. Just for an example, in maize, we constitute about 40% of the country's total production. Now, in soybeans, we also constitute about 42%, in sunflowers, 54%, and in groundnuts, it's about 40%. These are some of the few that we are pulling to demonstrate how decisive is the agriculture production in the Free State. In terms of growth, we argue that the above figures confirms that agriculture is a decisive anchor and driver of economic growth in the Free State, and thus government has resolved that we've got to place agriculture at the center of our economic growth. Our contribution to the national output has not been exploited to the full benefit of the province in terms of value add, value retention, job creation, building of the new factories and industries around agriculture. Our layout presents agricultural towns with all basics required to drive growth. Every town has a railway, silos close to the stations, underutilized factories, close proximity to residential areas, and all of this with possible lower input costs provides immense growth possibilities for our investors. We are currently working on the following as a province. 1, an aggressive push for agro-processing using solid and competitive supply of primary produce, building of new factories, industries to drive agro-processing and ensure export of value-added products, consolidation of various commodities for local, national, and export markets, consolidate efforts to realize the full value of livestock in private hands, particularly most of which are in the black hands. This is critical for the supply of good quality red meat for both local and export markets. Consolidation of the grain production and expansion of the fertilizer production in the Free State. The recent developments between Russia and Ukraine will tell you that there's a much more serious need for this. Provided decisive material support to the growth of apple industry and the revival of cherry and all other high-value crops destined for the overseas market. Our government is looking for partnerships, investment, and we are currently working on the following. Consolidate the apple industry in the Free State, particularly in the Eastern Free State. And in concrete terms, we have recently supported the apple project led by Remoho to the tune of 10 million, and we are finalizing an additional 7 million to revive similar projects in the Eastern Free State. We are working on reviving cherry, working with the private sector to financially support the revival of these high-value products and others similar to it. On the grain farmers, we are supporting the black commercializing farmers with the constructions of silos to provide storage capacity and allow black cooperatives to have a foothold in the sector. We look to spend about 12 million in the first phase as part of the current financial year. On the fertilizer, we are working with the private sector to ensure development of a fertilizer plant in Machabeng, and also looking to invest about 10 million working together or in partnership with the private sector. These are some of the interventions we are making to turn the sector around in the Free State to realize more growth. These interventions comes against the backdrop of various support provided to farmers. We have recently supported both young emerging farmers together with women with both implements, mechanization and livestock to the tune of plus or minus 30 million rands. Further interventions will be made to consolidate black commercial farmers with mechanization and other interventions during the current financial year. As promised during the budget vote, we will convene an agricultural indaba this coming March, which will allow a conversation on how to grow Free State around agriculture and leave the issues that are arising from this investment summit. As we conclude, Chair, as I promised about the 10 minutes, in the main, we seek to foster partnerships with the private sector to ensure growth of the agricultural sector. We are working on seeking external funding outside the government, which is what the previous speaker has raised. We are working very hard to create an enabling environment for new industries to emerge and to ensure that business thrive. We are very happy as agriculture that the government is rebuilding all the main regional roads that are key to moving agricultural goods and persons. We can speak with confidence that all of them that are critical to our economy are under reconstruction. The province seeks to focus agriculture as a core for our driver, and as a result, most of the intervention will be consolidated around this particular aspect. In conclusion, we will work to coordinate budgetary planning to impact and ensure that there's food security and job creation. Thank you very much.
I can go with you somewhere. Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Thank you so much, MEC Mukwena, MEC for Agriculture and Rural Development in the province. Opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. So now that we are done with the executive speakers, I do confirm this is where I'm probably going to do the most important task that's going to make me hated, but loved at 16:45 once the wine starts settling in. I do have a program that suggests Dr. Hubert Joint, Infrastructure South Africa, should be speaking now. But for obvious reasons, we have to slightly modify the program. Ms. Michelle Phillips from Transnet, please may I ask you, ma'am, to make your way forward. Infrastructure investment opportunities in the Free State Province. Ms. Phillips has to be at the airport at 13 hours. That's literally in 66 minutes from now. So however much time of hers she takes, that's how much later she's going to be at the airport. I don't have to tell you, ma'am. 10 minutes, starting now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Could I have the... Good afternoon to the Premier, Minister of Electricity, Dr. Ramokgopa, all of the Deputy Ministers, the MECs. In the interest of time, I'm going to rush through it. You'll protect me, Program Director, members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm going to rush through it, but hopefully, I know that the presentation will be shared with everyone, so we could engage again after all of this. I'm very pleased to be here in the Free State. As you know, I think Minister Ramokgopa and I have the two biggest problems in the country at the moment. Not many people are envying our positions, but of course we are here to serve and here to solve problems and trying to fix as we try to grow the country. Yes, my name is Michelle Phillips, and currently I have the responsibility of trying to ensure that we have an effective logistics system in the country. I'm going to give you very quickly brief overview, but you know all these things, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We'll talk about the rail reform. Why that is important is in the future you will see a completely different Transnet. The focus is really to ensure that we have private sector investing in our business. We'll talk to the opportunities within the Free State and, of course, the development potential. But I'm going to, you'll forgive me for rushing through it in the interest of time. Transnet essentially has 6 operating divisions. Transnet Freight Rail, 34.8 billion rand in revenue. Transnet Engineering really is supporting the Freight Rail division in terms of locomotives and rolling stock. We have the Port Authority at 13.4 billion, Transnet Port Terminals, 16.8. And recent times, you would have heard the concerns about the rail as well as the port. And then, of course, Transnet Pipelines. That's really my permanent post where I used to spend most of my time until October. And then, of course, Transnet Properties. Altogether, around about 70 billion rand in revenue, should probably be around the 78, 80 billion rand in revenue. Why are we here? Our mandate essentially to reduce the cost of doing business in the country. How do we do that? We are supposed to enable this economy through facilitating industrialization. This country will not grow if we are not making or manufacturing things. It's very important for us to bear that in mind. We have to facilitate trade, enable growth and development of the industry. Of course, the people with the money, the private sector. It's very important that we crowd in the private sector to enable us to do what we need to do to grow the country and ensure that we are then globally competitive. Essentially, that is our mandate, and that is what certainly one would need to strive to do as we move forward. If we don't have an efficient logistics sector, we will remain uncompetitive, and that's not where we want to be. We need to ensure that we are able to reach global markets. But in terms of where we are, we call South Africa an end-of-world destination. It's basically, when you talk about our ports, it's wayports. People come to us to stop off because they're going somewhere else, right? We have to get access to that markets, and it doesn't help if we are too expensive, but we are because we're quite far from them. We have to ensure that, we are transport intensive. We've got our economic hub in Gauteng. Road distances is less than rail in order to get to the ports. Distribution of agricultural and manufactured goods, bulk commodities, and unfortunately we have uncoordinated spatial planning. So between the manufacturing units or hubs, the IDZs and the SEZs, there seems to be we're not really linked in terms of the master plan because for some other reason we're not talking to each other. We've got a high transport dependency in GDP. A lot of what we do, as you know, requires that we transport them, and it costs a lot of money. High logistics costs, part of what we want to do in terms of optimizing and ensuring that both for inbound and inbound can't to reinvent because we need to grow the economy. What is our focus? One, fix and optimize the business. We have published our recovery plan to the country and to all of our funders, to our customers. Lots of focus on getting the operations to what it is supposed to be so that we can optimize on saving costs and growing our revenue sources. Of course, when I talk to you about the transformation, how do we see Transnet in the future? Transnet cannot do everything. I think we realize that the days of wanting to control everything and being everything to everyone is not going to work going forward. And we need to change that. There we go. I'm being reminded of my time, so I'm going to be rushing quickly. And of course, we need to expand. These are the rail volumes that really we move. Our balance sheet is content, and yet we need to invest. So the partnerships are going to be very important to us going forward. We'll share some. That is why, because of the rail reform, and as we move coming in so that we can turn around some of these losses. Fixing the operation, making sure that we are operating in the correct segments, rejuvenation of the rail logistics, and of course, very important, customer centricity. Our customers expect us to meet and exceed their expectations. They want us to be globally competitive, and therefore those are important. But the partnerships is where we feel we're going to be able to get the best value for our buck in terms of collaborating with industries and with customers. Essentially, rail reform, what are we going to see in the future? I'm not going to go through too much, but this is what the rail policy says. We want fair, non-discriminatory access to the network, regulatory frameworks, tariff setting mechanisms, very important. We've done a lot of work in that respect. Performance-based contracts, what this is about is introducing private rail operators onto the network. This is what TFR, or Transnet Freight Rail, looks like now, supported by TE as is. This is what we see the future state looks like. You will have an infrastructure manager, and you will have rail operating companies who would now be able to access the network, possibly lease rolling stock if they do not have that. We've got quite a big fleet that we want to make available. We will then have these companies also operating together with what we call the Transnet Freight Rail Operating Company on the same network. This is what the infrastructure manager is expected to do: provide the network statement, be responsible for the upkeep of the network, but essentially non-discriminatory access to the network. This is pretty much the same slide. I'm not going to go through it. It basically indicates what you will see. We've already separated. Available here for us is absolutely major, and we need to make the best of it. We've got agriculture, mineral resources, manufacturing that is able to form part of how we can grow the Free State. All this does is it shows you the core network, it shows you the connectivity. What's important here is to understand the strategic positioning of the Free State and how it is able to access inland as well as the ports across the country. This completed, if we want to make a noise about anything, it's to keep trains moving. You can only keep them, we will be able to do a lot more. I'm moving, right? What's important for you here, I'm being controlled. What's important for you here is all of the projects that we are working on across the country. We will share all of that, but for the main part, in terms of the Free State, the concessioning of the branch lines that is there to support your agriculture, and as well as developing inland terminals as consolidation facilities. If you are able to consolidate minerals, and then trucks get to the consolidation point and we move them via rail to the ports, that will certainly assist us in terms of also moving road to rail. Okay, I've indicated the operating model. What's important, the LeaseCo, we do not believe the private sector will be ready to get immediate access. We will make available rolling stock and locomotives of our B fleet that we can lease. Again, the Klerksdorp, Bethlehem cluster, these are part of the concessions you can see that we are able to make available, whether it be through branch line concessions, grain storage terminals, intermodal terminal concessions. Please talk to us. We are open for business. I'm going to move through this. Nice pictures, you guys will be able to see it, but essentially how we intend to support the agri and move, again, the purpose, move people out of poverty. These are some of the opportunities that we have. Reopening of the Hamilton Bloemfontein private siding. We want to talk about that, road to rail opportunities. We can see the customers that we're dealing with, as well as potential new customers. There's volumes to be moved here. Again, I don't like to talk about the challenges because it's about being solutions focused. But if you look at the Bloemfontein, Kroonstad area, the Free State, those red bombs that are going off, that's where we get hit in terms of thieves trying to get to our network, stealing cables and stealing rail, causing derailments. These are the initiatives that we have in place if we want to ensure delivery of what we are expected to do in moving volumes. Let's protect the network. It is not a Transnet problem, it is a country problem. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good luck for your flight. No. Thank you very much to Ms. Phillips, Acting CEO of Transnet. I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't understand the value and importance of Transnet, not just for rail infrastructure. Of course, that's probably as part of the primary fiduciary obligations of Transnet to the country, but I think from an integration, total economic integration perspective, I think the gains of making sure that Transnet is functional cannot at all be understated. I'm smelling something. It's very distractive, and I can see you're just as distracted. I beg 10 minutes of your time. 10 minutes of your time for Dr. Joint of Infrastructure South Africa to present infrastructure investment opportunities in the Free State Province to tie up with that conversation. After which, we will get some housekeeping and related protocols just to bring us all up to speed. Dr. Joint, you have 10 minutes. Thank you so much, sir. And you are one of the only diligent members, not just of the panelists or the persons who are speaking, but also in the crowd. You and I are the only two people in the orange, formerly Free State, to wear orange ties.
Thank you. How do I change the slides?
You want to use it?
Yes.
There we go.
Good morning, Premier, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, all dignitaries. I will not continue the list, otherwise I will use up my 10 minutes, so all protocols observed. I will speak to you about investment opportunities, but before we need to talk about the opportunities, we first need to address specific salient economic points. Some of them will also be, negative or challenges that we need to think about before you can convert that into opportunities. We'll start with investment trends, gross fixed capital formation. We all know the target for the country in terms of the NDP is that we should have 30% of our gross fixed capital formation as a percentage of GDP. Currently, the country sits around 15%, just over 15%, and we must reach that by 2030. But in terms of a Free State, you can see there's been a gradual decline since around 2015 in terms of gross fixed capital formation. But it's also important to look at your different, asset categories, because that tells you what